gentlemen, let me start by showing this little picture of when I was asked to give this talk. I thought of looking at the crystal ball and looking at what are the opportunities. And when I looked inside, I saw this little girl. And for the clinicians amongst us, you can see that there's bossing of the forehead, there is wrist flaring of the wrists, and she's holding that Indian flag. Are we reaching every such child with as scientists, as researchers? I think that is the question I thought we need to address. Having said that, it was easier said than done. This was how I felt when I said, what am I going to talk to such eminent scientists? And then I remembered our principal scientific advisor who's always telling us, chinta ki bajaye chintan karo. So I went into a chintan mode and I thought, this is an opportunity. I mean, there is me who is known for the multitasking, and this is a cartoon of the children of the college when I was a dean, who said that I'm into everything. I said, here is an opportunity for reach out to so many of you who've taken the time off to listen. And therefore, I came up with this solution that I give you a clinician's view. And in that, if I can combine research, well, if you're working on something exciting, you really care about, you don't have to be pushed. The vision pulls you. Quote unquote, Steve Jobs. And I thought this is my moment to convey my passion and reach out to you. So the passion has always been healthcare. And I think health involves, as we all know, preventive, promotive, curative. And in that, we have our research, we have our education, and I always felt that possibly we were not doing enough, and we need there's a lot that can be done. And the reason was that I felt that all of us, we go through this cycle of information and knowledge, whether it's from an undergrad to a postgrad to a PhD, a postdoc, and we are in that constant quest for information, knowledge. And by the time it comes down to wisdom, you can see the hair is all gray. So I said, can I reach out and say, can we start earlier? And where the problem is, I think we're all in silos. If you see this triangle, education, research, and public health, they are like three corners of a triangle who are there, each one in its excellence, towering. But I'm not sure that they are well aligned to each other. So this was something that when I took over as dean, I thought this is something I need to look into. And then what happened was this TIAC and got me an opportunity to think further, and an idea that I could present to the Honorable Prime Minister himself was that if we need to align these three with the patient in the center and the individual and public health and the country at its best, then we need to see that instead of a triangle, this now becomes a circle where one drives the other. And with all the technology available to us, whether it's artificial intelligence, innovation, automation, they all need to be in sync and one driving the other. So therefore, when we look at research, I think at some point we really need to align ourselves with what are the healthcare needs. What is the field of research I'm really working on? Am I using all the research tools available? So its utilization, selecting and identifying all three, I think is important. In our silos, we are either probably looking at just health, or we are looking at tools, or we are looking at research. So I think these three need to be aligned. So when you want to look at translation of research into clinical practice, what does it require? It requires the evaluation of healthcare innovations and prioritization. Funds are not unlimited. So whereas we want to bring in the culture of innovation, new ideas, out of the box thinking, we also probably need to do a top-down approach, prioritize our funding, audits for translational use repeatedly done, Look at innovations for lowering costs and automations in a country like ours, and look at research into the effects of the health disparity. Are we reaching everyone? And while doing so, I thought I must share some of the metrics that are involved with disease burden in the country. So we should be a little aware of mortality figures, something like the daily adjusted life years, and look at the quality. So when I do that, this is the picture, and look where we've changed. So obviously our healthcare has been doing, and the research has been doing a good job, but from 1990 to 2017, there's a huge change. I mean, where majority were children and infections, today you're seeing the non-communicable diseases, the cancers have now started making bigger blocks. And is it that this has increased, or is it that I think this has started reducing, and therefore the effective impact of these, the left side is much more. And the same thing when we look at the national figures, we look at the jump of certain disorders. And in that come your ischemic heart disease, the lung diseases, your asthmas, and look at diabetes. It's jumped way up here. And look at chronic kidney disease. It's again, and the ischemic heart disease, hypertension, diabetes worsen. So kidney will soon be climbing up even higher. And even, in fact, look at the drugs. The cardio drugs are the top selling drugs. So now, how do we align this into our research? We again, if we look at the mortality data, there's a huge change from 1990 to 2017. If we look at this, this was all your young children, all below 5 years. That has now become so much, and the whole curve has shifted to the right with more problems in the elderly age group. And if we want to know what's happening in the future, just look at some of the emerged and developed countries and look how fast we are reaching them. So it's pretty easy to, we don't need a crystal ball. We have to just look at the world and we know where we are going. And with our population, we are reaching there very fast and very rapidly. The same thing, if you look at the causes of daily, look at the change that has come in 2017. This is India versus Japan, Germany, USA, where they have remained almost. Look how fast we've gone up into the causes and problems which are more affecting, and the larger chunk is now your non-communicable. So how do you make your research count? I think we have various fields of research which you all are experts on, and you may be picking one of them. But while doing that, I feel, why should only these Olympic rings and faster, higher, stronger be a motto only in the Olympics? I think each one of us as a researcher is trying to get there first, trying to get higher, and trying to get stronger as far as evidence-based goes. While doing that, maybe we should ask a question and use whether there is an AFAS principle. Can we be vocal for local issues? And what is the AFAS principle? It is how, when by doing this research, am I making something more affordable, feasible, acceptable, and sustainable? I think this is something. And as in all other fields of life, the Pareto principle holds here as well. We may find that 80% of the problems could be solved with 20% of ideas and funds. So I think we need to concentrate and start looking at that. And we are knowing that there's a paradigm shift in healthcare, and I will not repeat by using the cliches of artificial intelligence and Internet of Things and all what have you is all coming in very fast. But what are the disruptive technologies in health research which would make an impact and which needs to make an impact in our country? I think our scope is huge for big data analytics, and because whether it's machine learning or artificial intelligence, it is this big data analytics where we have a strong foothold. The second thing is, we have a population, we have numbers. So if the quality of that data is good, we can make a difference to the whole world and give answers. And these can make essential tasks 7 to 10 times better. We need to use this to take our research to the villages to improve health. And machine learning can be used for images and medical diagnosis, and they have to be our research which is fast tracked, which is implemented and makes a difference. There are a lot of areas where a lot of people are doing a lot of work, but I think we need to collaborate, collate, and bring it to the masses fast. Another area I think is GIS, and I'm very happy that one of my colleagues, Colonel Joshi, now he's posted out, but he set up the first GIS facility at AFMC as well. So that let's start looking at taking this data, mapping it with our problems, and actually having the various layers in place. Just to share that only 7 out of 355 infectious diseases of clinical significance have been comprehensively mapped for researchers. And I'll come to that in a while as to how the One Health concept is changing everything. Another area which needs to be and is already taking off is telehealth, because medical care with telehealth can reach the doctors, reach the doorsteps where the doctors could not. In fact, I often quote that there's a saying that which goes that God could not be everywhere, so he made mothers, but I think doctors cannot be everywhere, so he made digital health. And I think we need to partner in that and look at common problems like tuberculosis, diabetes, heart disease, cancers, and we need to have implement these methodologies for early diagnostics right down to the grassroots levels. The other thing we need to look at is, are we ready for an aging population? We are soon going to meet up with the other developed countries, and I think we need to go there fast. And as far as the Prime Minister's TIAC missions, I think for all of you, this would be of a huge interest, that there's a big mission on Biosense for human health, where we are looking at having the Indian genotype completely mapped, the genome, so that we start implementing precision health. And the other these things of a national biodiversity or waste to wealth have already been taking off, and I think they're going to make a big difference. I think another area where we need to concentrate is new molecules using all these technologies. India is looked up to as the pharmacy or the place where all the medicines are being manufactured, but we don't have any new molecules. Agreed, it requires huge amount of funding, but if we can use newer tools and repurpose drugs and find our own solutions, I think that would be a huge step towards the future. I'm bringing all these points because I feel the majority of the audience is from Pune, and these all matter a lot because the capacity and capability of Pune is tremendous. With that, I bring you the concept of One Health, where we need to collaborate to look at achieving optimal health outcomes, recognizing the interconnection between people, animals, plants, and their shared environment. I think it's very well seen that the zoonotic infections are rising, the humans are getting closer to the animals, and the environment is having a huge impact on health. And I think this is of strategic importance as well, because at some point we will have to do a capacity building and quick diagnosis and mutations of all the infections besides the viruses. And the recent corona has shown us as to how the one RNA virus could really come get the whole world onto their knees. So this I come back to the slide I showed initially of the leading causes of death, and I have circled a particular huge chunk here, and there is a reason. Because if you see, I just brought in the concept of One Health, and if you look at COPD, asthma, all these cancers, I mean, aren't we correlating these more and more to environment, to lifestyles, and to viruses? So I think if we start looking at these things holistically, we might be able to come with a holistic solution instead of a band-aid or a quick fix one. So with that, I come to what are our challenges. What at the moment is happening is we have compartmentalized education. The medical course is about MBBS, the engineering is about a BE. You know, the various disciplines really don't integrate. We have workplace silos. There are IP issues and sharing problems about data, information, knowledge. Financial constraints are there. There's a problem of a gender inclusivity, which is a dream. It's not really coming out because in all the STEM fields, to begin with, you have all 50% or more women, but by the time you reach the top, they just all peter out. So I think we need to change that. And there's a lack of mentorship. I would come to that at the end of my talk, because I feel this is a huge scope where we can do a lot. Now, what are the opportunities? There's a lot happening in the country. The National Education Policy has been launched, which clearly gives a scope for breaking those walls and integrating education, having combined courses, making the walls of our institutions porous so students can use facilities as well as train themselves in interdisciplinary approach. The next thing happening is the National Research Foundation, which has earmarked 0.1% of GDP over and above all the funding that is there through DBT, ICMR, and all the extramural funding that's available. And this NRF is going to target it to the schools, colleges, and universities to bring in a good culture right from the young days. The third thing happening is bioclusters and city clusters, which are now picking up in a fast way. There are huge schemes, especially for women, especially to come back. And DST has amazing amount of schemes in that. And secondly, the societies, as we reach out, society is reaching out to the scientist community. And this, I think, is a big opportunity we all need to. So if you look at the Nature Index collaboration indices, India versus global companies, what is really stark is, whereas we have all autonomous and institutions here, look at the global top 10 in United States, they're all universities. So I think this is somewhere where academics, research, and application will go much closer if we take them to our universities. Secondly, look at also the collaboration as far as finances and academic content goes. It's so less as compared to the universities abroad. To take this further, if we look at the collaboration among nations, if you look at USA, where the percentage is 61.6%, and all other countries, it's a huge, and USA is the biggest collaborator. When it comes to India, our percentage contribution is only 39%. Even, and look at this overall coordination collaboration score, it's just dismal 62.45%. This is another opportunity for us to grow. And with keeping these in mind, I would like to take a little time to tell you that there is a thought process which is not just remaining as a thought anymore, because there is the science and technology clusters are being developed for a global best in class, similar to the Catapult centers in UK, and this will make research count. And this is under the umbrella of the Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor, and Niti Aayog had formed a high-level committee where 4 cities were identified as a phase 1, and the best thing that has happened is that the first cluster allotted has been to Pune. Now, how does this function? Firstly, it gets all the 3 to come together. That is your public research institutions, the vibrant community of local and international scientists, and your corporate labs, so that there is better collaboration, rapid and direct knowledge exchange, a high return on public investments, and global leadership in key technologies. So this is the international model which we are going to try out, and it would have a double approach, that is a top down and a bottom up. So whereas the top down would be policy driven, challenge based, grant funding and outcome measurement. The bottom up would leave space for educational research institutions to start from younger scientists to think out of curiosity, to think logically, and remove the cut, copy, paste that goes on. And also to ensure meaningful interdisciplinary research in areas of national interest. And these city clusters would have building blocks, which would have educational, institutional, technology parks, national research labs, in industry, R&D, philanthropic foundations. And if you look at Pune, we have a huge number of institutions under all these 4 headings, and therefore they would be stakeholders would be the central, state and line ministries, and that would there would be a huge interaction between these. So with that introduction, I'm really happy that the first cluster that has been sanctioned and allotted has been the Pune Knowledge Cluster, with Ayuka taking the lead as a PI, and Ayuka would soon get all of us together to develop. And what are the targets that have been given for the Pune cluster? Develop and execute specific small scale projects which are relevant for Pune city. So we need to start a dialogue with the end users, find out the problems and try and give them priorities through small and large projects. And one of the key areas they've given is using data and data analytics for studying and improving tree cover, for studying and modeling of last mile connectivity by e-transport. I think everyone from Pune will agree that it's the only good thing of COVID of sitting at homes is you don't have to drive on the roads. And another huge I've put in red is vector dynamics and viral epidemics. And look what Pune does not have. It's got medical colleges, it's got the Institute of Virology, it's got top institutions like NCCS. I mean, we have everything. There's NCL, there's ICER, and there's so much that can be done on this. And this is a KRA of the Pune city cluster. And I think this is of huge strategic importance and capacity building, where this could be like the hub from which the spokes would go out. And we saw in Corona where to begin with, we had just NIV and we could ramp up testing capability across. So we should be prepared for the future of any such epidemics and have capacity building and research into it. The other thing is larger scale infrastructural projects to address the city's issues. And again,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we lost your screen a few minutes ago.
Oh, okay, sorry. Let me just get back. Which slide did you miss out from? I don't know why okay, it stopped sharing. I'm so sorry. Had you seen this slide?
Yes.
Had you seen this slide?
The first slide of Pune City Cluster.
Had you seen this slide?
Yes.
Can you please answer?
Yes, yes. We have seen this.
You have seen this one. So I'll carry on from here. That we now get on to, I had spoken about the Pune cluster, and here I've mentioned about the importance and our opportunities to start collaborating quickly for capacity building in vector dynamics and viral epidemics. I think this is of a huge importance to the country, and I think Pune can give the way ahead as NIV has always been doing, but I think we can step it up and take it across to the length and breadth of the country. What are the larger scale projects we're looking at? Integrated electric multimodal transport, Pune Digital, and city water management. I think these are also important, but most important is for the young professionals to have a capacity building of students and young professionals for skill development. And today, I think we have enough of information, lots of knowledge, but we lack on skills. Even the medical education has moved towards a competency base. So I think we need to integrate, we need to make our courses which are interdisciplinary so that we can understand each other's language and work together. And in this, there would be advantages for all the cluster institutions, as I've highlighted in this, to just name a few. It would give a recognition, a celebration of science, and definitely improve our global ranking. So with that, I bring in the theme of collaboration and look how the collaboration for this COVID-19, and we showed the world, because this was an opportunity in a challenge. The scientific community came together like never before. All institutions, the DBT, the DST, the ICMR, I may not have named all of them, but there were many more which came together as a team, whether it was for rapid diagnosis, digital and molecular surveillance, including genomics, and NCCS has contributed so much, and other institutions like IGIB, and we've given a huge data to the world. New and repurposing drugs, PPEs, they were produced in rapid this from a time where we didn't have enough masks to today we are able to give it to other. The supply chain and logistics, and of course the vaccine. I think this was one time where empowered committees were formed and ministries, scientists, all of them came together and took quick decisions, and we have seen how our case fatality rate is among the lowest in the world. I think that was something amazing that happened, and SARS showed us. In lighter vein, it also brought out some interesting. We talk of evidence-based medicine, but sometimes it's an experience which takes us forward. Just to this thing, I remember this was in a March and April where COVID was spreading, and we were looking at ways and means, because we just did not have, and the public was getting scared and wanting to use up all. So it was those who could afford got the N95. And that was the time where we had a little conversation, and Dr. Shailaja from the office of the PSA, and we said, you know, we were once a nation of recycle, reuse, and it makes common sense. If there's nothing, instead of using, why are we not using cloth masks which can be washed? And she went ahead with a great leadership and research, and brought out the first on 1st April that masks for curbing the spread of SARS-CoV-2. And I remember the newspaper said, I mean, there's a dichotomy. The WHO is saying no, the ICMR has not yet given out something, and there's the scientist community which is saying use cloth masks. And today that's come to be a savior. And look at the evidence which came in later. As an estimated of RO of at an estimated of RO of 2.4, the mask was seen to be reducing it to 1.35. And assuming that 50% are using mask and 50% masks have a good efficacy level, so how does it translate? 100 cases at the start of the month without masks would land up at being 31,280 versus 584 at a RE of 1.35. So this is somewhere, sometimes it is experience which brings in, and evidence has to be followed up to see that it is stronger. And I think this was a very, very important, and today the whole world is following not just the Namaste of India, but the mask and the hand washing. Another question that we are all questioning, and we need to look at a lot, is why is the Indian doing so well? I mean, we've got a huge population, it's so much more crowded, and our health infrastructure isn't really what the developed nations had, and yet we've done really well. So absolutely full marks to the kind of policies that were implemented, the lockdowns, people listened, there was a complete participation of across the ladders. But what was important was there something else which happened? And Dr. Shekhar Mandey and me were having this discussion, and he shared something with me which is yet to be published, but I'm sharing with you with his permission, that it was very interesting to see that the case fatality rate was inversely proportional to the GDP, and therefore is the hygiene hypothesis working over here? So there is India over here at the case fatality rate, and look at the case fatality rate of developed countries like Belgium, Italy, Spain, US, UK. So I think this is another interesting, but I think we need to, there are a whole lot of things going on, and I know research is going on, whether it's the BCG, whether it's the hygiene. So I think we need to look at this in a little and tell the whole world, because this would be something for the future. I would be incomplete if I don't talk of the COVID vaccine. And yes, we are also there, and there are the Indian trials going on. I would just like to have a word of caution that we definitely should make sure that we follow guidelines in any research we do. Are we ethical? It was a very interesting seminar arranged by ICMR, where even Dr. Fauci said that, this was one place where people were pushing for a human challenge test, but why he felt it was not required and an RCT, and therefore it's going ahead with an RCT. So I think these are questions we all need to answer if we want to make our research meaningful, ethical, and yet giving the desired results. At the same time, we need to get a machinery in place to ensure that once the vaccine is ready, who should get it first, who should get it. So the plan is on, and this is being worked out. And I would from here take on to some of the efforts where we work together to have a great solution for our local problems. One such effort was a maths and medicine. This was modeling for a cause. And it was really nice that AFMS joined hands with the JNCSR, IISc, IIT, Mumbai, and under the umbrella of the PSA, where we did a complete inventory requirement projection. Yes, to begin with, the numbers projected were higher, but then it was a self-correcting graph, and it changed with our interventions. But at a click of a button, with a granularity of district level, we could say what would be, at least for up till 4 weeks ahead, what would be the requirement of all the medical inventory. So I think this was excellent learning experience for me itself. And we have now brought out where we're ready with almost 100 districts. And this was the Pune model, which was provided, where look how closely it correlates with the projections, the actuals and the fit, in whether it is cumulative infections. And you can see this is exactly what's happening. So this has been done now for more, and this is through a huge, large mathematical supermodel work which is going on under Dr. Vidyasagar, and we are a big team working on this, and I probably just give the medical. So what is important is that we have to collaborate. Maths and medicine has to work together. And another area where we need to collaborate is integrative medicine and research. I mean, there are so many opportunities. I had heard a talk here at NCCS when Dr. Mashelkar, how he pushed curcumin because our own haldi was not good enough. It was when they were, and they would have got the patent. So now there is a new committee which has been formed to look at integrative medicine, and it is really heartening that we are working on these, whether it's ashwagandha, there are trials going on even for COVID. And in that, I would like to share that AFMC isn't back, because we have one of our faculty with a PhD in sleep medicine, and she has able to materialize a dream for us to work on this yoga nidra, that what is it and how does it help. And with this background, we set up a full sleep lab which is looking at cognitive performance. And this is something which is going on at AFMC under the Satyam scheme of the DST. And another initiative which I'm giving a peak view, which is still to present this, is that there is a huge lacuna or a gap for mental health and normalcy, and COVID has brought that to this. So therefore, number of institutions have got together to try and create a national digital wellness platform, which is being coordinated by Dr. Ketki from the PSA, and we're all working together. Because physical illness was known, but mental illness, there's a poverty of resources and a huge gap. And mental wellness, well, there is nothing for it. For physical, you have gyms, you have everything. So what was the idea? It was conceptualized in June, and because there were so many COVIDs, every day the news is talking just of that. So I think we need to all get down together, and so many people are all coming together, the ministries, the institutions, and the aim is that as a POC, a proposal would be presented, and if accepted, we would be able to have a positive mental health initiative with universal accessibility specific to the Indian population using digital technology under the National Digital Health Mission, ensuring data privacy to maintain anonymity and avoid stigma. So with that, I've given an overview of collaboration. Now I come back home, huge bond between NCCS and AFMC, which was first struck under the guidance of then Major General Velu Nair, who was the Dean, and he had started off a PI to PI working, and a number of publications did come out. But one felt that if for true collaboration, it has to go to the next step, and we need to have an institution to institution, especially when working with the armed forces, where individuals move out. We need to have research has to continue. So with that in mind, we set up this MRU at AFMC, where a group of 4 people, and these are my colleagues, worked together, and in a year later, the team became bigger, and each one of this in the team is set up one lab, whether it is the epigenetic lab of Pratibha, where Dr. Bapat is really helping her, or the 3D printing lab, or the virology labs with Saurav and people there, and our community medicine cohorts. And at that time, Shankar Subramaniam, the head of medicine, who was my vice dean research. So this was a dream taken forward from a good foundation. And what we concentrated was bringing everything under one wing, and gave a further thrust to UG research using even alumni funding, created an IP cell under an officer, Shekhar Nima has been looking after it, and started getting more of extramural research funding through an extramural research cell. And for this, I must thank the Office of the DGFMS and the research wing of the office, which helped us take this idea forward, and the ministry also gave their blessings. So this we had, but nothing happens without timeline. So we walked against a race against time, and in 2017 we put from proposal to setting up and getting the staffing in place. And one of the issue under that was stem cell research, because this was something where my predecessor, General Nair, had really taken initiatives in, and it's a huge place to collaborate with NCCS. So that lab is coming up, and I think there's a lot that can be done, because all the rest of the things have been completed. We are concentrating through a Nidan project, through getting our genetic labs, and have already trained the resources, and things are in place. So I think, and as we've also set up our sleep lab in the cohort village, but I think what we need to really take up is bring translational research by having a hospital and the NCCS working together to ultimately have our GMP certified stem cell research laboratory where we can work together. And another area we're looking forward is with CDAC and ISER in the vicinity, whether we can use bioinformatics. And we've done small AI projects, but I think there's a huge scope for that also. And thereafter, I think we would also be able to start collaborative PhD and postdoc fellowships. I think that would really be, and then have our own consortia for NCD prevention, and that would be under this hub of collaborative research, we could really reach newer heights. What would be the areas of interest? I think, yes, like I mentioned, genetics is something that DBT is looking at and is supporting, and we are already set up our first center in Delhi, and the second one we hope to would be in Pune. Infectious diseases biology research, especially the tuberculosis, we've still not got over it, and we need faster, quicker, higher, and better research in that. A multidisciplinary regenerative medicine research is also an interest. Precision medicine guided by genomics, cohorts for phenotype, genotype with biobanks, and NCCS AFMC collaboration would really be the basic blocks which would create the foundation, and look at autoimmune diseases, and thereafter start with MD PhD programs, setting up of facilities, strengthening our virology labs, which already ICMR is helping us, and set up more such labs for integrated research through Satyam. And then probably all of us, if we feel the need, we could bid for an incubator, or our city cluster would be good enough to take this thing forward. So these were my main dreams that I've shared with you, but I would be not completing my message, because this is something has been a bit of a cliche, but I love to say that I feel very humbled and honored to be a 3-in-1, which most of us in uniform feel very proud that we are soldiers, teachers, and doctors. So with that, what brings to the table is the soldier teaches us, and I think this is something we can share with each other, that the nation comes first, the organizations next, subordinates thereafter, and self is last. And obviously everyone looks out to the armed forces for a smart turnout, punctuality, and more important, a fit mind in a fit body. I think this is a crux which needs to go out to society, and we need to practice before we preach and do research in it. As a teacher, I think we need to practice ethically before we start teaching, because we are role models, we are being looked up at. And competence and knowledge is paramount, because that is what gives us the confidence and the courage of conviction. As far as a doctor, I think every human being needs to be compassionate, caring, empathy, and have the right combination of head and heart. Because if you have to rule with your head, you need to lead with your heart. And if anything is worth doing, it's worth doing extremely well. And I've put this little cartoon here to say that our brain has a left side and a right side. Let's not spend time only developing one side of it through science, research, but the roots would be on society, on all this, the key elements, what we call the humanities, the arts, the culture. And if we keep the two in sync, I think this tree can become stronger. But at the end, I think the big role that when I look at and say, as for myself, what is it that I enjoy being most? It is that of a mentor. And I feel in this day where Google Maps are way forward in research, I think you do need also, every student in the audience would agree that you need a mentor, the correct attitude, and a passion. And for the teachers, I think there's nothing like being a mentor. There's huge returns for all of us, even after we leave our chairs. I think this is something that can go on forever. And there's a big bond between a mentor and a mentee. And in that, I would like to quote the Atharva Shirsha, because the Ganesh Pujas are going on, which says, Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahe Tejasvinavadhi Ma Tamastuma Vid Vishavahe. What does it mean? Together, that is for the mentor and the mentee. Together, may we to move in our studies. Together, may we to relish our studies. Together, may we perform our studies with concentration and diligence. May what we have studied be filled with brilliance and not give rise to hostility or misunderstanding. I think trust in research and a relationship of a mentor-mentee is paramount. That I end, and this looks like a busy, cluttered slide, but then I've had so many mentors and colleagues in life which have all helped me, and people I've worked with, whether it's the Supermodel project, whether I really give my great regards to all the directors of the institutions of excellence in Pune and eminence with whom I've interacted on large number of occasions, and without you, we cannot go together. But more important is my DG AFMS and the DGMS Army, who've always stimulated us to go through. I think I've kept a big chunk because for lack of space, I've put 3 names here, but it's the entire NCCS team which works with us so closely. And as far as my AMC team goes, I think it is huge, where each one has been either a mentor or a mentee, and we've always worked together. So it's always been a we, and my teacher, always I dedicate everything to him, which has been Dr. R.N. Srivastav from the All India Institute, who's put me into nephrology and doing things. And these are my colleagues with whom we've done a lot of, whether it's cardiovascular outcomes, whether it's bladder dysfunctions, and a lot of nephrology research. And my happiest moment was yesterday when one of my ex-students, Badal, now a faculty, gave me this good news that the Young Scientist Award at the International Conference has gone for his thesis in his DM neurology, or Shaw, when he completed his complete project on keep making normograms for neonatal jaundice, or Vishal's research, which has taken got one of the highest rating. And I mean, this has been a collective. So now when I look at the crystal ball, I'm no more confused as to what happened, because I think it's been a great teamwork. So I think let us leave on the message that we join hands, and at the center of this, I dedicate this to my family, who really has stood by me at all times. Thank you so much. I think before I end, I would like to say a vision without action is just a
पाँच मिनट का
dream.
मैसेज सुनूंगा
Action without vision is
लिंक
just
चल
a
ना फोन
task.
में
But an
हेडफोन नहीं
action
चल
with vision can change the world. Jai Hind, and thank you. I think I needs to now go away. Let us all put in a we, so the country will go from illness to wellness, and together we can do it. That would be my last take home message. Thank you very much.